and an education activist, says the blanket approach to the progression of pupils is worrying. Hendrick Makaneta is warning the Department of Basic Education that this is likely to produce lazy youngsters who cannot think independently. He joins me in studio now to talk about his views. So lazy people who cannot think independently, quite a damning assessment of what the likely consequences are of this progression policy that the Department of Basic Education uses at the moment. What are you basing this on?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Tula Sizwe. I'm actually basing this on the fact that, perhaps just to give a background, the department says, for example, in a specific phase, a learner is not allowed to repeat one grade twice. In other words, let's take senior phase, for example, that is grade 7, 8, and 9. If a learner fails once in grade 7, the following year or the next year, that learner has to move to the next grade, even if the learner has not performed well. And, we are saying that it creates lazy learners in a sense that learners already know that once I have failed once, the next year I don't have to put any effort, because in any case, whether I work hard or not, I will still go to the next grade anyway. That is where the issue of the blanket approach comes in.
So as opposed to what? What should be the approach then?
The approach should be that learners need to be encouraged to continue to work harder. The policy must be amended to an extent that it must apply only to learners who work very hard. Learners who show the potential and the willingness to do their work the following year. For example, from time to time, learners are given assignments which form part and parcel of the school-based assessment. And together with the exam, even if the learner has not done well, but we can see that this learner has been committed to doing the work. Unlike currently, whereby a learner can just sit back and not necessarily put any effort, but at the end of the year, schools will affirm that learner on the basis that the learner is already repeating the grade. That is what. I'm not sure
how that sits with me, because I can't imagine a situation where a pupil sits there and decides that I'm not going to apply myself because in any case I will be progressed after 2 years. I mean, it just seems to me like this is something that many don't choose. It's simply a case of some of them perhaps don't even, some of them perhaps understand the content but don't do well in exams and other socio-economic factors that come into play. So I don't know if anyone would necessarily choose to say, I'm not going to apply myself because I'm going to be progressed anyway.
Well, I've been actively involved in the terrain of basic education, and I've been involved with learners, and I know what I'm talking about. There are learners who are quite willing to walk an extra mile. And what I'm saying is that we need those kind of learners who are willing to work, and not necessarily learners who will relax. For example, if you go throughout the country and ask teachers about this progression policy, they will tell you that indeed there are learners who just come to class and, whether you give them homework or not, they choose not to do it. They come back the following day and just sit back. You give them an assignment, they take the document with them, and then when it's time to submit, they don't submit. Teachers have to run around, actually, looking for them to make that submission. So these are the type of learners that I'm talking about, that this kind of learners should somehow be excluded.
But that would be a smaller proportion, wouldn't it? A smaller proportion of the pupils who end up being progressed would be the ones who just sit back and don't apply themselves and basically rely on being progressed. I suggest to you that this would be a smaller portion. The greater majority actually put in a bit of work.
Well, it depends, of course, from one school to the next. I would not necessarily categorize it as a smaller.
You know why I'm saying this to you? Yeah. Because, I mean, in the recently released results, there were some, I think if I'm correct, some 33,000 pupils that were progressed from grade 11 to grade 12. And about 60% of those actually passed. And from the statistics that were given, some of them actually got really good marks. And, with admission to a bachelor's degree and distinction.
Yes, you are now talking about grade 12. You are referring to the grade 12 learners who have been progressed. I'm I'm referring to the
lower grades.
The entire system, not necessarily grade 12 only. I'm talking also about learners in grade 8, learners in grade 9, learners in grade 7. We are referring to those learners as well. And of course, coming back to what you have just said, if you look recently, there was a topic about Western Cape where they believe they've done better.
Yes.
And in a sense, if you look at it, yes, Western Cape is far much better when you look at the number of learners who have been progressed, because they have got a fewer number of learners who have been progressed as compared to other provinces. So this progression policy applies a lot in provinces such as Gauteng, the Free State, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and so on, as opposed to Western Cape, whereby learners there are putting a lot of effort and they are able to pass on their own. So I'm saying that in the long run, it's good to deal with the dropout rates, because we understand the intention of the minister. And of course, we agree with her that it would not be nice to have a high dropout rates in the system. Already, we have not accounted for more than 300,000 learners who started in grade 1.
Sure.
And that is a cause for great concern. But at the same time, we must also look at the quality in the long run to say what type of society do we want to create.
So as opposed to a blanket approach.
As opposed to a blanket approach.
Repeat a grade twice, you have to be progressive.
Exactly. It must never, ever be a blanket approach. Teachers must be able to identify learners. In actual fact, the learners who have been progressed, teachers, together with parents, must be able to be actively involved in the work of these learners, to monitor them on a daily basis, to make sure that at the end of the day, they are able to make us proud as well, as opposed to just sitting in the classroom and expecting to just proceed anyway.
All right,
that's why I'm saying it will create lazy learners. And in the long run, it will also create lazy leaders, because these learners are going to be leaders someday, and they'll just be lazy, thinking that we can get anything.
Hendrick, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That is Hendrick Makaneta, who is an education activist, giving us some food for thought there in terms of the progression policies of the Department of Basic Education.